time for almost 50 years, so I'm happy to be retired. I was an audiologist and a speech language pathologist.
Uh-huh.
All right. So this is, as I said in my introduction to this session, this is one of my favorite passages in the Bible, not least of all because it it announces the birth of Samson. My son happens to be Samson. So when a few days before he was born, my then wife and I read through this and sort of got sort of acquainted with the story of Samson, which is not necessarily the story you wish for your child, but it certainly was interesting. And it's also interesting because of a particular line in it, which comes back in the prayer book, which is, I think, very interesting. So, without further ado, I'll share the screen that has a translation. It's not obviously the only translation, but it's it's a fine translation. It's the old JPS translation, and so somewhat like the King James version. And if people have other versions in front of them, they can refer us to them as makes sense.
Oh, Rabbi Jen,
Yes.
what do? I can't get the whole English part in. I've got.
That me, right.
That's my.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. How's that? That better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Every time I share the screen, it's a different shape or size, so I have to adjust. All right. So, so for those of you who haven't necessarily been part of every single one of these sessions, we have noticed a very similar structure to the stories in the Book of Judges. They generally go along the lines of the Israelites did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, right? And we see that right. Right here. Vayosifu b'nei Yisrael la'asot hara b'einei Hashem, right? And the children of Israel continued, right? Yosifu. They continued to do evil in the eyes of God, right? And so what is the punishment, right? God delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years, right? But there was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of Danites, whose name was Manoach, right? The Ishto Akacha, right? So a very common condition for women in the Bible to be to what the old fashioned version, right, of English would be to say that they were barren, right, or just that they were unable to have children. So they did not have children. Go ahead, Thelma.
Oh, now I have two questions. It says velo yalda, so this means not a daughter?
No, it just means that she did not have children.
Really?
Yeah, the lo yalada, right, is just that she.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. Yalada.
That verb would be yalda with
Yes, right.
with.
Okay.
I'm not enough of a grammarian to know why this form is slightly different.
And what was it that the children of Israel did? Was that idolatry?
Generally, it is idolatry, right? Generally, it's idolatry, although it's not always specified.
Okay.
Generally, I think it is idolatry. It's, and which, sort of raises this very interesting question generally about the Book of Judges, which again, if you've, for people who've been part of these conversations for a while, right, we will have seen this sort of odd shift, right? We have the book of Joshua, where the Israelites are all sort of doing what the Israelites are supposed to be doing, and they are seen as sort of conquering the land appropriately. And then in the book of Judges, we have this sort of constant refrain where there is this, where the Israelites are doing evil. There's this sort of backsliding into an idolatrous condition.
Mhm.
And the general idea, I think, of the book of Judges, right, is that this kind of seesaw effect. Let's see. Looks like we have someone else coming to join us. Hold on one second. Hello, who's on the phone with us?
Hello, this is Shirley Goldman from Fireman Community.
Oh, great, Shirley. So nice to have you join us.
Thank you.
All right, so Shirley, we're just getting started on chapter 13 of the book of Judges, which is the
Okay.
story of Samson, and we're talking about the very beginning of the chapter, which talks about how Israel does most likely, it says evil, but it's most likely idolatry, right? And that the book of Judges in many ways seems to be sort of a polemic against this sort of model of leadership, where there's sort of not much leadership for a while, things go really badly, and then a judge, as they are called, or some sort of a chieftain comes and sort of takes charge, and things kind of go back to normal for a while. And then when that person dies, right, things begin to fall apart again. So there's this kind of, sine wave sort of thing, and it's seen in the scholarship as kind of a polemic that we need a steadier form of leadership, namely a king, right, which we will see in the book of Samuel, right, where we have the notion that we need to have a king. Right, so when we have Zorah, now, so this is the story of Shimshon, right, of Samson, and he's a very unusual judge. Right? He's a very unusual judge, as we will see, for any number of reasons. Right, he's the only one who receives this kind of what we would call in the biblical studies an annunciation scene. Right, so an annunciation, or is a fancy word for an announcement. Right, so when Isaac is going to be born, right, the angels of the Lord appear to Sarah, and they appear to Abraham, and say that within a year's time you will have this son. And of course, at that point, Sarah has not had children, and she's 90, and Abraham has not had children, and he's 99. Right, so what do? They laugh, right? They disbelieve, right? They have this sort of, it's ridiculous, right? Of course, it does come to pass. So this is a fairly typical biblical trope, right? That there's a woman who, in the old-fashioned English, they say barren, right? Important to note, right, that her name is never given. Right, which again is nothing unusual in the Bible, right? So, but she is known as Ishto, right? His wife or his woman. Okay. So, and Robert Alter makes the point of saying, we're gonna, when I translate this, I'm going to translate that as his woman, even though probably in idiomatic English we would call it his wife. Right, but the emphasis is on that. There's a real gendered emphasis here on her being a woman, right, and Manoach being a man, right, and we'll see the implications of that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and an angel of the Lord appeared unto the woman, right. And this is verse 3. Vayar malach Adonai el haisha, right. So. Malach, the word malach can mean angel. It can also mean messenger, right? So you always have to be careful when you're reading the Bible to figure out, well, which one do they mean? It's pretty clear in this case that it's an angel. But also interesting that it seems that it's clear in part because for the woman, it is clear, right? she seems to get it right away, the implications of this. And the angel of God said unto her, behold, now thou art barren, right? Akara, you are Akara, and you have not had any children, but thou shalt conceive and bear a son, right? Very similar to what Sarah hears, right, in other barren women, right? And therefore beware, I pray thee, and drink no wine nor strong drink, and eat not any unclean thing. For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head. For the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. Okay, so this is very interesting, right? Because no other judge is presented as a Nazarite, right? And it's not even clear, right, that Samson himself needs to abstain from wine or strong drink, right? The story of Samson, everybody knows, right, that the big thing about Samson is you're not supposed to cut his hair off, right? Because that's the sort of the source of his strength. Sort of like, Achilles is invincible except for his ankle, right, where his mother dipped him into whatever the river was, right? So in a way, the story of Samson has as many sort of connections to other sort of mythological traditions as it does with the stories of the Bible. But the narrator here puts it into the context of the Nazir, right, which is a category of sort of religious ascetics that's discussed in the Torah. And indeed, those people don't cut their hair and they don't drink. Okay, so
It's an example of could be his fault. The sexism is offensive right from the get-go.
well, actually, Sandy, I mean, of course you're right that
I am right.
the Bible is always a patriarchal text, right? And at the same time, right, this text in particular is a very interesting one, as we will see in regards to the gender, right? So the other interesting thing about this, right, is that there's no record of a Nazir depending on their mother not to drink, right? So this is a very unusual situation. It's more like sort of anticipating modern science, right, and understanding that pregnant women would do well not to drink alcohol while they're pregnant. All right. So we have this annunciation, right? And what is he going to do? V'hu yachel lahoshia et Yisrael miyad plishtim, right? And he will sort of get started, right? He is not going to be the one who actually delivers the Israelites from the Plishtim, from the Philistines, right? But he will sort of get that process started. All right, which is also very interesting, right? The thing to know about Shimshon, right, from the very get-go is, unlike the other judges, are all military commanders, right? They all fight in the context of a larger army. Samson is a lone fighter, right? He's a lone hero. He doesn't really he doesn't lead other people into battle. He goes and does all the battling himself. He's more like Hercules than he is like Achilles in that way. All right. Then the woman, right? Very important. So in a sense, her name is the woman, right? The woman came and told her husband, saying, a man of God, right? Ish ha-Elohim, right? A man of God, which could mean a prophet, right? Like Elijah or Elisha, but it also could mean an angel, right? Like an actual holy being. Came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God, right? So here we see that the woman is very wise, right? This is a very wise woman who understands that this messenger was not human, but was probably actually from God, right? And it seems important, right? And Sandy, this is one of those moments where the Bible doesn't always behave as you might expect it to, right? That here the Bible is actually making it clear that this woman is worthy of being having a direct connection with God, whereas her husband, well, not so much, right? So and what does she say? And so Malach Elohim Nora Me'od. It was very terrible, right? Very not terrible, really, probably, but so much as awesome, like very awesome, right? It filled me with awe to see his face, right? And I did not ask where he came from, nor did he tell me his name, right? So she not only recognizes that this is an angel in a sense, she also knows somehow, right? Either because just of her inborn wisdom or she's learned somewhere else, that you don't ask an angel where they came from, because the angel came from God. And you don't ask the angel their name, because angels will not tell you their name, right? So you might remember when Jacob has his wrestling match with the angel in the book of Genesis, right? He says, I'm not going to let you go until you tell me your name, right? And the angel says, you should not be asking me your name. I'm an angel of, I don't know if he says I'm an angel of God, but the angel refuses to give the name.
Rabbi Jim, I have a question.
Please.
Is there any significance to the fact that Robert Alter doesn't say angel, he says messenger instead of angel?
I mean, yeah, probably, maybe. I don't know exactly what the significance of that is, except that, as I said before, this word malach can mean angel and it can mean messenger. And he might be playing, he often plays in his translation, right, on the perceptions of the characters. So he may be making an argument that's the opposite of mine, that the woman has a sense, but is not willing to actually go all out and say that this was an angel.
And the Hebrew is malach?
Hebrew is malach.
In Swahili, it's malaika, and that's from Arabic.
Yes. Well, that surprised me, right? Because Arabic and Hebrew share a number of terms, right? So it's not surprising at all that if the Swahili came from the Arabic, that it's the same word. Yeah. But that's angel, David, or is that messenger?
That's angel.
Angel. Yeah. Okay. But he did say to me, right, behold, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and now drink no wine nor strong drink, and eat not any unclean thing, for the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb to the day of his death. Right now, that is also very interesting, right? Because a Nazir, when people are a Nazir, right, by and large, as I understand it, now you don't want to quiz me on Nazirs, but as I understand it, people generally do not become Nazirs for their entire lives, right? They become Nazirs for a certain period, and then that period, expires, and they can go back to having a normal life. But this person, this child will be a Nazir for their entire life. Then Manoach entreated the Lord and said, "O Lord, I pray thee, let the man of God whom thou didst send come again unto us and teach us what we shall do, that the child shall be born." All right. So what do you think of Manoach based just on this verse? So he's just heard from his wife, right? Or as Alter would have it, from his woman, right, what she needs to do in order to make sure that this child is born, right? And immediately Manoach says, God, send us this guy and have him tell us what we need to do, right? He doesn't have much faith in his wife, right? He's the kind of person who can't learn from other people. He needs to see it with his own eyes, right? So Sandy, again, we're already getting a sense, right, in this patriarchal text, right, of a patriarch who I would say this becomes almost satirical as we go through, right? We'll see that the text begins to essentially sort of make fun of Manoach, to sort of paint him as a completely clueless person, right? And that his wife is the one who is in touch with things. All right. So, and God hearkened unto the voice of Manoach, right? Vayishma Elohim b'chol Manoach, right? And Manoach means something like restful, right? To rest. And the angel, but what is it that happens, right? God hearkens unto the voice of Manoach, but the angel of God, again, according to this translation, Alter might have messenger, came again unto whom? Unto the woman, right? He ignores Manoach, right, and appears to the woman, and as she was sitting in the field, and Manoach was not with her, right? So the angel comes again to the woman without Manoach around, right? So what does the woman do? She knows how upset Manoach will be if he hears that the angel has come again, but not come to him. So Vatmaher ha'isha v'tarotz v'taged l'isha, right? And so the woman made haste and ran and told her husband, right? And look, the man that appeared to me the other day, right? He's come again. So obviously Manoach's wife is very aware of how thin-skinned and upsettable he is, and so takes care to let him know. Right? And very interesting, Vayakom vayelech Manoach acharei ishto. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Rabbi Jim, I have a request.
Yeah.
Could the person who's making that noise mute
Oh,
herself?
yeah. I think it might be Ellen. I'm going to mute. Okay.
It is.
There we go. All right. Great. All right.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So this word in Hebrew is very important, right? That he got up and walked after his wife, right? That he walked after his wife. So he is at least implicitly recognizing her superiority in the matter, although he really can't quite do that consciously. And he won't even let her speak to him, right? He says, right, are you the man who spokest unto the woman, right? So in a sense, right, this really is her name. Her name is really the woman, which I think is a fascinating sort of thing. And the angel says, I am. And Manoach said, now when thy word cometh to pass, what shall be the rule for the child, and what shall be done with him? Right? And what does the angel say? And the angel said, of the Lord said unto Manoach, of all that I said unto the woman, let her beware. Right? I already told her. You don't need me to tell you, because I told her and she can tell you. So don't be so annoying. Hold on, excuse me 1 second. Someone else has joined us in the, let me just let that person in. Hello, who's on the phone with us now?
This is Phyllis.
Oh, Phyllis, great, wonderful. I'm sorry, I have to have a waiting room today for a variety of reasons.
Oh,
So
well, I'm late. I'm sorry, but I had to see what was going to happen with the impeachment vote.
Oh, yes. I heard, I saw a little thing pop up saying that they voted to impeach. So
Yeah, but I wanted to know how many Republicans were going to vote for
So
it.
what was the answer? What's the answer to that question?
10.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm sorry I'm late.
That's okay. For a very good reason. Very good reason. All right. So we're just talking about how an angel comes to the woman of Manoah, and that's sort of the term of art, right? Because the woman here is clearly favored in God's eyes, right? And has direct communication. God has direct communication with the woman, and the woman's husband, who's Manoah, is presented as kind of a buffoon. And I think one of the questions that we want to ask is why would that be the case, right? In this patriarchal. Okay. And then so he does then finally repeat, right? She may not eat of anything that cometh of the grapevine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink or eat any unclean thing. All that I commanded her, let her observe. All right. And Manoah.
So immediately the woman is put in an inferior position, and that continues in Jewish religious law unto today.
You know, it's an ongoing struggle. Right? It's an ongoing struggle, Sandy. You're exactly right. All right. So Manoah said to the angel, right, of the Lord, I pray thee, let us detain thee, that we may make ready a kid for thee. So who is Manoah trying to emulate here? Right? It would be Abraham, right, who makes food for the angels when they make the Annunciation to Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, though thou detain me, I will not eat of thy bread. Hold on one second. Alter translates this word as food, right? Just to make it clear that it's, even though he says bread, right, he doesn't mean just literally a loaf of bread. He means, daily bread, right? Our daily food. And if thou wilt make ready a burnt offering, thou must offer it unto God. And now the narrator makes it finally clear, for Manoah knew not that he was the angel of the Lord. So David, my guess, I don't know for a fact, but my guess is that that Alter is playing with the perceptions of the characters, right? That Manoah is so thick, right, that he doesn't quite recognize that this is an angel, and he keeps on persisting and thinking that it's just a regular human being.
Uh-huh.
Whereas the wife seems to get it right away, right, that this is an angel. All right. And Manoah said unto the angel of the Lord, what is thy name? That when thy words come to pass, we may do the honor, right? Again, this is exactly what the wife did not do, right? The wife did not inquire about the name, did not try to detain the angel for a meal, right? but the husband can't seem to figure this out, right? And the angel of the Lord said unto him, wherefore askest thou after my name, seeing it is hidden? Right? Humans cannot know the names of angels. So Manoah took the kid with the meal offering and offered it upon the rock unto the Lord, and the angel did wondrously, and Manoah and his wife looked on. And this is the phrase that I love. At the end of this verse, if you have the screen, if you don't, I'll just read the second half of the verse, which is the angel did wondrously. It's not entirely grammatical. Umafli la'asot, right? And the angel did wondrously. That's how they translate it here. Let's see what. Not exactly. David, do you have the?
Which are we on? Which verse are we on?
It is verse
21.
21,
No, verse 20.
verse 20.
The second half of verse 20.
Oh, I'm not.
Whoa.
And Manoah said to the Lord's messenger, "What is your name?" Or was that
The
before?
one right after that.
Oh,
Actually, verse 19. I'm sorry, verse 19.
oh, okay. That's Manoah did not know that he was a messenger of the Lord. And Manoah said to the Lord's messenger, "What is your name?"
Yep.
Okay.
And why do you ask me my name when it is a mystery? Right? And Manoah took the kid and the grain offering and offered them up on a rock to the Lord, and the other was performing a wonder. So that's how Alter translates it.
Yeah.
He makes it more grammatical. He seems to make sure seems to make sure that it's makes sense a little bit more grammatically. All right, so this idea of God, basically that he was doing a wonder, right? And what was the wondrous thing that the angel of the Lord does, right? For it came to pass, right, when the flame went up towards heaven from off the altar, that the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. And Manoach and his wife looked on, and they fell on their faces to the ground. Right? So the flame kind of goes up, right? They offer it on the altar. The flames go up, and the angel sort of zooms up to heaven amidst those flames, right? But so they fall on their faces, right? That's what you do when you encounter an angel, right? You fall on your face in awe, right? The same awe, right, that the woman expressed at the very beginning of her interaction with the angel. But the angel of the Lord did no more appear to Manoach or to his wife. Then finally he gets the message. It took him this long. He's like, "Oh my God, this was an angel. Wife, this was an angel." And she's like, "I know, I told you that from the very beginning that it was an angel." And then Manoach knew that ki malach Adonai hu, right? And then the mocking of Manoach goes on, right? And Manoach said unto his wife, "We are going to die because we have seen God," right? Mot namut ki Elohim ra'inu, right? We really are going to die, right? This is going to be really bad for us. But the wife, his wife is very calm and says, "Manoach, chill out," right? If the Lord were pleased to kill us, he would not have received a burnt offering and a meal offering at our hand.
Next one.
Neither would he have shown us all these things, nor would he at this time have told such things as these, right? If God really wanted to kill us, he wouldn't tell us that we were going to bear a son, right, who is going to be holy in some sort of a way, right? So I don't know exactly beyond sort of the comic value, right? I mean, it's not as uncommon as we might think that the Bible has these sort of comic scenes, but I'm not exact. I can't tell you off the top of my head. The Bible is being funny here for X or Y reason, right? And usually there is some sort of reason, other than to sort of introduce Samson in the context of sort of male obtuseness, right? Because in many ways, Shimshon continues this sort of theme of male obtuseness throughout his life story. All right. And the woman bore a son and called his name Shimshon. Okay, so Shimshon, people often say, is very similar to Shemesh, right? Which is the Hebrew word for, you're right, Thelma, it's getting dark out. It's the Hebrew word for sun, like sun in the sky, Shemesh. So, somehow he's related to the sun or to light. And so again, there are these sort of mythological kind of overtones to this story, which I think it's interesting to sort of think about how we have this kind of semi-supernatural hero popping up, kind of like a demigod, right, popping up in our Jewish scriptures. Not the most common, thing. And the spirit,
Come in.
Sandy, I'm just going to mute you. You can unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Fine.
And the spirit of the Lord began to move him in Machane Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. Right. So very interesting, right? This is there's a, and I think Alter talks about this, right? That there's this really interesting kind of question. What does this word mean? Vatachel ruach Elohim, right? Because usually, if ruach, the spirit of the Lord, usually descends on people, right? It usually sort of comes to rest on them, right? And it's one of the reasons why we have in Judaism, when a rabbi receives ordination, right? There's a resting of the hands on the back, right? And there's this sort of sense that the rabbi's teacher is sort of, in bringing down the Holy Spirit on that person's shoulders. But Shimshon does not get this kind of descending business. He gets this tachel. So Alter says it means more literally to pound or pulsate within him, right? And Alter says this makes sense, right? Because it's kind of along the lines of his violence. All right, so I wanted to just show you in terms of, I wanted to show you this map. Hold on one second. We can sort of see where is this. Can people see this, or does it need to be bigger?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Yes, you can see it.
You can't see it.
I
Yes.
can, yes, I
Good.
can see it.
Good. All right. So we see, right, that that Zorah is here, right?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and then
There's
Sheol is here. So this is kind of where the Spirit of the Lord, and here you see in this little translation, right, it says it came down upon him, right? But that translation is a little bit funky, right? And it's very interesting, right? What should be the translation? Give me 1 second, and I'll be right back. There's a couple of midrashim that suggest various. All right, so it says so one option is the Spirit of the Lord began to ring, right? So said Rabbi Isaac of the school of Rabbi Ami, right? That the presence rang out for him like a bell, so powerful that it overwhelmed him, right? That Shimshon was eventually just sort of overwhelmed by the Spirit of God. Or the meaning may be the Spirit of the Lord began to ring within him, giving him such power that he was able to eliminate the distance between Zorah and Eshtaol, right? So the notion that that here's Zorah, here's Eshtaol, right? They're not that far apart, right? But that Samson didn't have to actually walk, right? He could sort of transport himself or jump or something like this, which is not an uncommon trope within the Midrashim, right? That when people are endowed with the Spirit of God, they can travel great distances in very little time. Likewise, oh no, I'm sorry. For as Rabbi Asay said, Zorah and Eshtaol were two lofty mountains, and Shimshon plucked them up and ground them one against the other. Likewise, asserting that the Spirit of the Lord began to ring within him between Zorah and Eshtaol means that God endowed Samson with great physical strength. Rabbi Samuel Bar Nachman said, like a man who picks up two pebbles and strikes one against the other, so Samson plucked up two mountains and slammed them one against the other. The other reading would be that the Spirit of the Lord began to enlarge his stride. So, and this gets back to the other one, right? That Rabbi Yehuda maintained that after the presence rested upon him, Samson could, in a single stride, cover the distance equal to that between Zorah and Eshtaol. Right. So we get this sense. Whoa! We get this sense of Shimshon as this kind of of supernatural kind of a hero. All right, so I want to look for. I'm going to stop the share for a moment, and then I want to look for one other thing. But I want to invite people to reflect on what we've read so far. Any thoughts you have, or reactions to this? Yeah, please, Thelma.
Yeah, so we are supposed to assume that the messenger or angel acquires human form because he's referred to as a man,
Yeah,
and then he goes up in flames, essentially.
yeah.
So I was wondering whether A, my reading is correct, and second, about the symbolism of the flames.
Yeah,
That would, I mean, nobody with human form could actually do that, of course.
right.
But nobody expects him to be completely human. But there must be other instances where the flame becomes symbolically important.
Yeah, that's a
But
really interesting question. Any thoughts about that? I'm not. I don't have an immediate sort of like um, response for you, but I think it's a very interesting question. Yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
My understanding of an angel is that they have one job to do.
Yep.
And when their job is finished, they're finished.
Mm.
So he did his job by speaking to the woman, and now he's finished. So he goes up in flames. He doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, right. That could be it. That could be the point, right? And it would be sort of interesting, right, in terms of Manoach's uncouth behavior with Angel, right? That Manoach, in a sense, sort of extends the angel's existence on the earth, right? Insisting that he come back, right? Uh, and and insisting for a sort of a replay of the instructions, even though they were very clearly um, very clearly communicated to the woman already. Uh,
Mhm.
but I also think, right, that it's also that there's this kind of you can make the symbolism of you could think about the symbolism of the flames also as kind of the ultimately destructive force that Samson will represent. So I don't know if that is relevant, but the other angels, so far as I know, uh, don't necessarily uh, um, don't necessarily uh, uh, rise up in flames from their appointed round.
Yeah, so now I'm going to have to pay attention to how angels disappear.
Exactly,
in the-
exactly. Which is a good idea, I think, in general. I think sort of paying attention in general to how biblical characters make their entrances and how they make their exits is not a bad practice. Shirley, did you want to say something?
No, I'm listening.
Great, wonderful. No, I just heard a little rustle, so I wondered if that meant you had something to say. Other responses before we move on to the next, the last little piece that I wanted to bring today. All right, great. So one of my favorite prayers in the Jewish tradition is called Asher Yatzar, which means who formed. And so I'm going to put that up on the screen in a not phenomenally great format, but it's the one that I have close at hand, and we'll go through it, and you'll see why it's relevant to today's conversation, and we can sort of think about how we might understand this. So it says, "Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the person." Ha-Adam, right, is not man. It's man in the old sense, right? In the old sense that man represents, the word man represents all people, right? But now we would say who makes people, or who formed the first person with wisdom, and created within them openings and hollows. It is obvious and known in the presence of your glorious throne that if one of them were ruptured, meaning the like veins and stuff like this, or if one of them were blocked, right, it would be possible to exist and stand in your presence even for a short while. This is a prayer that we read upon getting up in the morning. It's also a prayer that in observant circles people say every time they use the bathroom, right? Because it's, in that context of all the plumbing working correctly, right, that we want to sort of acknowledge the miraculousness of our bodies, right? Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, rofei chol basar, umafli la'asot, right, and performs wonders, right, which is exactly the words that are used to describe what the angel does, right, mafli la'asot, right. And so the question that comes up, right, is, well, why would the rabbis who made this blessing, why would they choose this little piece from the story of Samson to generalize to all people? Go ahead, Sandy.
There's a ceremony for the firstborn son of the first pregnancy.
Yeah.
It takes place at 30 days, and I had a firstborn son. And it's a really good party that you have to introduce him to the community.
Yeah. That's great.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Any other ideas? Yeah, it's so I'm not sitting here with a whole worked out disquisition on this, but I do think, right, that the way here I want to sort of have a little bit of, I was making a lot of fun of Manoach before, right, and sort of saying, how could he be so thick, right? How could he not recognize that this was a divine being, right, that had come to speak to him and his wife, right? But I think one of the reasons I think that, and I don't know if this is, I can't prove this, right? But one of the reasons that I think that that the rabbis enjoin us to say this every time we use the bathroom, right, is to sort of remind us, even in moments that we might sort of think of as our, shall we say, least, our most earthly, right, our most sort of, our most embodied, right, that this, that it's a miracle, right, that our bodies are miracles. And I mean, I would probably argue that's even true today, right? Even though we understand about our bodies so much that we now talk about not the miracles of our bodies, but the miracles of modern medicine, right, to keep our bodies going. But the part of the miracle of modern medicine, right, rofei chol basar, right, is that that our bodies have so many ways of healing that we have been able to discover, and so that that this constant reminder that our bodies are a miracle is a sort of a crucial piece of being alive and of of of, uh, of recognizing the sort of the value of constant gratitude for them.
Hey,
Even
Jim,
if as we
I don't understand what this has to do with
go ahead.
Samson. I don't understand what this has to do with Samson, though.
I'm not sure that this. I'm not sure that. Well, actually, that's a really good question. I'm not really sure what chapter 13 has to do with Samson either. And I
Huh.
think that's what's really, other than sort of giving him the status, right, of a kid that gets an enunciation, right? But he doesn't end up, being being a hero, that he doesn't leave a legacy, right, beyond being a strong guy who marries a Philistine girl and ends up getting his hair cut off and so on and so forth, right? I mean, like he's not someone. He's not like the other judges who sort of go down in history as being this really successful military leader, right, or someone who's able to bring the Israelites together, right? He's really a solo. He's a solo show, right? So it's not really clear why he gets this enunciation scene. So so the question might be, as I've already said, what does chapter 13 have to do with 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 Samson, right? And if chapter 13 doesn't have much to do with Samson except by way of sort of setting it up, like, well, why is chapter 13 here? Right? What is it doing here? And I do think that part of it is the sort of a meditation on humans, the human capacity to recognize the presence of the sacred or the presence of the divine, amongst them, right? And that um, there's this sort of range uh, presented, right, between the woman who seems to be very, very sensitive, right, to the presence of the sacred and seems to identify right away that this angel is an angel, right? And then on the other hand, Manoach himself, who seems to be a complete, a complete numbnut and, doesn't have any idea, right, that there's something sacred going on until all of a sudden he feels threatened by it. And so I mean, again, I don't know, and maybe that's what I don't know. I'm just speculating now that maybe that's something that the rabbis are getting at, right? That we need to cultivate our capacity to be like Manoach's wife, right, and recognize as much as possible and at all times, right, the presence of the divine, even amid things that seem to be completely quotidian. If that makes sense. So I open the floor to other thoughts.
Rabbi saying, I have to go. I'm sorry.
That's fine, Shirley. I'm so glad you joined us.
I am too. Thank you.
Welcome. Join us again most every Wednesday at 4:00. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Rabbi, as someone who had a firstborn son from the first pregnancy, it was such a special party that we had.
Yes. Yes, I think right. And so maybe that's something that this is getting at too, right? That in a sense that every birth, right, has some kind of an enunciation, right? And that enunciation is clearer, right, somehow to the woman than it is to the man, right? That the woman is the person who carries the child, right, is more in touch with the the holiness and sacredness of that process. It's quite possible, Sandy.
Rabbi Jim, my iPad is dying here, so I need to leave.
That's okay. Thank you. And we're
Thank-
past time anyway, so we should. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
All right. So any last words before we close? All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. And we will continue next week with chapter 14. And we will see Samson getting into some trouble next week.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.